coming to the part of the next session that we are going to take up. In the pre-lunch, we have been listening to a lot of deliberations about making it to the top, being impactful, diversity, inclusion, and building big businesses. But is that all sufficient for a business in new age? In the global context, when we see the big businesses, it is the mindset that is all matters. A gentle reminder again to everyone, please use as much as possible hashtag WDC21 and let the world know about us. On the other side, also let me tell you, the winners are going to get a free access of 3 months onto the platform of Mentor My Board, so that you will enjoy all our services. You will get a lot of insights, a lot of learnings, a lot of trainings as well to all the viewers out there. Coming to the next panel discussion, which the topic name is Global Mindset for a New Age Business. So the word itself says so much about it, and we are very excited to invite all the panelists as well. We are living in a disruptive era, and in this era, it's important that our brands transform with changing business environments, changing times, fast-moving generations, technology, and innovation. At the same time, with boost in technology, today we are living in a global village. Yes, this surely needs global mindset for us as board leaders today. So we have a wonderful panel who is going to discuss opportunities, challenges for boards of today in this VUCA world. Yes, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. Are we all ready to imbibe those deep insight? I hope everyone's answer is definitely yes, a very enthusiastically yes, and a lot of full of curiosity as such. For understanding how to have a global mindset for the businesses of the new age, we have with us today Mr. Sanjaya Jain, Ms. Bhavana Bindra, and Savithri Parekh. So let me introduce each of the panelists today. I start with Mr. Sanjay Jain. Mr. Sanjay Jain is an MBA from IIMA with a double gold medal, FCA and FCMA. He is the managing director of TT Limited, which is listed on Bombay Stock Exchange and National Stock Exchange. He is also chairman of JITO Business Network and ICC National Textiles Committee. Mr. Jain is director, EC member of CII Textiles, SIMA, ICC, City, IAAI, NCCI, BJS, and TPF. He is a mentor of Santa Clara University, USA, and Biznessclinic. He is also an author of the book, Pinch of Salt in Recipe Called Life. Wow, that's really beautiful word of that book, name of the book, that is Pinch of Salt in Recipe Called Life. We welcome you, Mr. Sanjay Jain. Thank you so much for your time, for giving us today, to all the audiences who are very eager to listen to you today. We welcome you. Our next panelist is Bhavana Bindra, that is managing director, board member, writer, speaker, a diversity sponsor as well. She is on the board of Kennametal India Limited, that is ASAL, Automotive Stampings and Assemblies Limited, Volvo Line Cummins Private Limited, and Cummins Sales and Service Private Limited. She is also the MD of South Asia, REHAU Further, she is also advisory board member, MML, that is Master My Life, EQ Education Private Limited. She has many accolades and awards in her kitty too. We welcome you, Bhavana Bindra, to this platform. And of course, very excited to know your insights about this topic called business mindset. Then we invite Ms. Savithri Parekh, that is, she has over 25 years of corporate experience and is currently Joint Company Secretary and Compliance Officer of Reliance Industries Limited. She has worked in a variety of sectors and was heading sectorial divisions of Pidilite Industries Limited before she moved to Reliance. She has authored books on corporate laws and is a specialist editor of A. Ramaiah Guide to Companies Act 2015 edition, general editor of NC Bhandari Guide to Companies Law Procedures 2015 and 2018 editions, and a book on listing regulations, all published by LexisNexis. May I now request the dignitaries to take over, and over to you, Bhavana, for the panel discussion ahead. Once again, I welcome you all three. Thank you so much for your time, and let's together make this panel discussion a hit. Thank you.
Thank you, Manisha. Appreciate the introductions. So I think each of us will just talk a couple of minutes of about ourselves and our journeys. You, of course, had a lot to add. I was almost losing track of all the abbreviations that were added with Sanjay's name and introduction. And Savithri ji, very happy to be here with you. Awesome to be part of the same panel. As for myself, so today I am the managing director for REHAU Polymers. It's, as the name suggests, in the space on polymers serving across industries. I have started my journey in consulting with the Boston Consulting Group, moved on to being in the manufacturing and engineering space with Cummins India Limited, and also worked with a Dutch MNC called DSM. As part of my journey from full-time employment, I have also parallelly wanted to pursue the passion of being able to guide and influence some of the other organizations, and that's where the whole journey with the boards began. It initially began by being on the board of one of the companies that we set up as part of the business that I was running. And the idea was to actually look into new frontiers, because the business was very traditional, old. It was like typical manufacturing. And the idea was to say, hey, how do we need to move with the times? So we actually set up a new business, and that's where my journey on the boards began. Of course, it went on to being part as an independent director for various other companies, some of which Manisha talked about. I'm also on the board of Jackson. It's into power, including looking big time on the solar side. So yes, there is a need for traditional businesses to be thinking out of the box. And so this topic today is very apt. I don't think everybody's figured it all out. I think we are all learning in the process. But then when did we say learning would ever stop? And it's also part of my passion to bring value to the boards that I'm on, as well as in the process bring value to myself. So that's a little bit about me. Before we go further into the topic, I would request Sanjay to give a little bit more flavor with all those abbreviations against your name, Sanjay. I'm still getting over them. So over to you, Sanjay. Would be great to hear a bit about your journey, and then we can talk to Savithri.
Thank you, Bhavana, for passing the baton on to me. I really don't want to bore the audience with any more details about me. I think so. As Bhavana said, there are too many initials and abbreviations that I myself got a bit confused. But anyway, I grew up with the learning that change is the only constant. Everything else is transitional. But as I grew up and as I've been through the business world, I've realized change is a compulsion today. It's no more even an option. And I think so. This is from where this topic of new age businesses or businesses in new age, if we can just turn around the words, people think we are in a traditional business, someone is in a new age business. But I think so. Every traditional business has subsets of new age businesses in there. You really can't be isolated and say, I'm not changing, I'm not in the new age. Because I think so, whether we like it or not, and I feel we are on an escalator or a treadmill, whether we like it or not, we have to keep moving forward. Otherwise, we're going to topple over. So that's been my belief in life. In my book, 2 important chapters are out of the box and disruption. Needless to say, I am a real firm believer that we are always evolving. And I'm in a very traditional business in textiles. Of course, we are exporting probably all across the world. I have traveled to over 55 countries. So I have a global perspective. I see a lot of people around. And I must say, when you go to Far East, we do a lot of business with China, other Far East. So you do see a lot of women everywhere around. In fact, if you're in a Chinese exhibition, you're going to find equal number. There's a total gender parity, if not in favor of the ladies. So I think so this mindset, that women need to come up. They need to do apologies to Divyaji because she's focused from a women perspective, this whole conclave. I think so the days are slowly going off, and women are there in their role as a human being, and they're expected to do as much as anyone else is doing. And if you want to be in textiles, which is very traditional, and no one would think that there can be any new age, I'll just give you a couple of examples just to make you understand. Online internet, e-commerce, after post-COVID, the way it really swamped up. Nothing was selling offline, and suddenly we were swamped with orders online. I even ran out of packing material last May. That's how bad it can get. Even today, we had to order extra packing material and get it on an SOS basis. We picked it up we got the warehouse open, picked it up for Flipkart, Amazon, and have with a car taken it to our factory. So you have to be, and I myself, my daughters also started a new business which is related to mine. She's also into textiles, and I'm guiding and mentoring, and I'm learning every day. Textiles per se has always been a global business because there's a lot of export, a lot of import. You are always connected with the world. Even if you're selling domestically, you're still connected, because what happens domestically is impacted, whether it's price-wise, quality-wise, what's happening globally. So this connection can never go. This change can never go. So anyone who feels I'm safe, I'm in such a company where I don't have to think about new age or businesses, you're sadly mistaken. There are always those islands within your company which are being formed or created, which are tomorrow going to occupy a very large part of your landscape. So I'll just sign off for now with one last thing. Out of box thinking is no more an option. If you are not up to date, you still are going to be out of the box, not positively, but negatively, because the box is anyway going to move forward. So you might as well stay in tune, keep learning. You just need to keep yourself abreast. You need to keep learning. And very importantly, you need to interact with the youth, because they are the people who are really going to give you that knowledge and that feel of what's really happening in the world and what's going to happen tomorrow. Thank you. Now I'll pass on the baton to our senior most panelist, Savithri ji. I don't know if you remember, Savithri I remembered we have shared a dais once in Calcutta in a company secretary's thing. When I saw your name, I asked Divya ji, is she from Pidilite? Well, yes.
Thank you very much, Sanjay. Yes, I do remember the Calcutta interaction, and look forward to a lovely session today. First of all, thank you very much, Divya, for putting together such a wonderful program, and I'm quite excited as much as my co-panelists are. Thank you, Bhavana and Sanjay. We actually are going to have an exciting session talking in terms of our journey. I think I fit in somewhere in between both your professions. I began my career as a management trainee with Mafatlal Fine Spinning, and then went on to a pharma company in Calcutta. Worked in Calcutta in a pharma company initially, did a brief stint overseas in UK, came back, took up a job with a media house, which was actually into traditional print media, and it also acquired ABP News, which was completely new age. And at that time, it was at a time when TV was actually into terrible loss making, and TV news was definitely not a profit-making proposition. But of course, the tides have turned thereafter, which was of course known. The main point is actually, how do you trade off between the short term and the long term and find a fine balance? Of course, I was handling legal and secretarial. So as just as rightly Sanjay also said, out of the box thinking, and Bhavana also mentioned about creative destruction, which was also mentioned in the book of Sanjay. I think all this is applicable to each one of us as a professional, because unless and until you keep reinventing your own skills and look at new applications for your own skills, even if it's knowledge skills, you're actually going to be out of the race. It's self-opt-out, which is what is more dangerous in the current scenario than the one where someone tells you that your job is going to be different from tomorrow. I still remember when I started my career, people would walk up and say, I'm a specialist in XYZ. Of course, that's exactly what we studied as students when we learned all about industrialization. It led to specialization. And even today, I still recall my days when I was a management trainee in Mafatlal Fine Spinning, where I went back to the boss and I told him I didn't have any work. So he gave me a couple of books, including the annual report, and said, find some work for yourself. And then he said, by the way, get the charges satisfied. So I went up to the banks and, collected and collated all the information and started satisfying those charges. I won't go into the details of the charges, but during my interactions, I found that State Bank of India had an excellent knowledge with respect to the core banking of those days, and which I'm sure even today it is relevant. But today, when you go to a bank and speak to a banker, it's clearly a case of specialization and super specialization, where a person who handles lockers would only speak about lockers. That wasn't the case earlier. And I think that's exactly where it is all the more essential for us to learn, unlearn, and relearn as we go along our careers. I'm not going to speak about the entire journey, but suffice it to say that I fully agree with Sanjay when he said that the Chinese have more women in their teams. I would actually say the same for Russians also. And I actually, talking of globalization, there are several challenges which we're going to be discussing in this session today. But when I was working for VFS Global, a company which had operations in about 44 countries then, it's in many more now, it's actually in 3 digits today. What happened was there was one particular instance where I was meeting a partner, joint venture partner in Moscow. And, we Indians, we speak fairly fast. And I, for one, I think my speed is a little more. And I was sitting at the discussion table and talking to him. And he just kept looking at me. And there was another young girl who kept looking at me. And after some time, of course, I realized, and she was introduced as the translator. But then I realized that the translator was translating whatever she could based on whatever I spoke. And I don't know whether she translated everything. It was a very pleasant meeting all the same. So that's when I realized that it's also important to understand some pieces of what you're actually dealing with and who you're dealing with, because you don't know whether it's actually being translated right. And that also brings me to another short trip of mine to Dubai, where I had been on a vacation. And I'd been to one of those markets, and there was this young Mangalorean boy, must have been less than 30, and he was speaking to us in Hindi, obviously. Little later, he spoke to 2 foreigners in German, and in another 5 minutes, he spoke absolutely fantastic Portuguese. And it was amazing to see this person who was actually, by Indian standards, not literate, but he had his skills. And today, it is actually a day of skills. And you need to see as to what skill you bring onto the table and how do you add value. Where do you fit in the value chain is what is more important. Are you learning? Are you able to bring value onto the table? And what is a better way to learn than to take up teaching? And I would put quote unquote teaching, because when you teach is when you realize that you know very little and you're actually learning. And that's exactly what happened when I went to IIM to teach, because I learned much, much more, and I cherish my experiences there. I think without taking much time, let me hand over to Bhavana to take the session forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Savithri ji. I think very aptly summed. There is enough happening from a global perspective across businesses. But there's one thing I'd also like to add. Every time I think about a global mindset, I'm thinking about, how we apply learnings across the board, right? So a lot of time, the minute you use the term global, you're only thinking about internationalization, countries, continents. The point is that even if, so for instance, one of the boards that I sit on, they're pretty much focused on the domestic market. But the point is, can they restrict their learnings and their application of learnings to the domestic market? No, the answer is we need to think and take benchmarks from wherever possible. And I think that's a sea change that is happening today in the way businesses are run. Even if exports or imports or connections with the other countries are not a big part of what you're doing today, it is important that you pick up whatever are the best practices from elsewhere in the world. And I think I'd like to kind of take it a step further. We've talked about the new age, right? And it's very all of us know we are in the new age, and all of us know the businesses have the compulsions of tuning in to the new age. And the minute we talk about, having a global mindset, it's basically the way you said, Savithri ji, thinking out of the box, making the adjustments, pushing the limits, going beyond what you thought was the obvious answers to things. And I think that's where I'm, of the view that it's not always that, you can expect the whole organization to kind of go across the board and make it happen. It has to be driven from the top. And when I'm saying the top, it's actually at the boards that we need to start pushing the envelope and driving what the challenges and the answers to those challenges for businesses in the current times would be. So, Sanjay, I'd like to, kind of pass on to you on how boards can help, push the envelope, or kind of, let businesses become a little more tuned in to facing these challenges that they are, kind of looking at in the current times. And of course, turning those challenges to opportunities. So, Sanjay, over to you.
Thanks, Bhavana. Boards, as we all know, they are right at the top of the pyramid. And they play, of course, an extraordinarily critical role, especially in giving a company direction, whether it's strategic or it's medium term. It's much more than execution. So any of you in the audience who are on boards need to step out from that, a funnel of knowledge or experience that you may have gained, which has given you a board seat, and really expand your horizon to have a 360-degree approach. Because when you're sitting in a board and when you're discussing future business opportunities, or when the management presents to you an opportunity and says, we are looking and these are the ABC reasons, what they look from you is not to look inward, because they themselves have looked inward. They know what their company is. They know their SWOT. What they need from you is to see what they have missed out. What is an external perspective? So to have an external perspective, it is very important that you are in tune. You're not restricted to probably the boards on which you're a director. You're not restricted to your specialized area of working. You need to be exposed to people. You need to be exposed to events. You need to be moving. Unfortunately, though virtual is considered to be very good, but I think so virtual is very, very business-like. Like today, if we had this physical conference, apart from this panel discussion, the off the panel, the discussions over tea, coffee, those small chit chats is where you really pick up so much more. You build a network. We exchange cards. We remember each other in particular time. So it's very important to be traveling and not looking everything from a business perspective. So I think so. Board members have to have that thing. They have to have that knowledge base. They have to be thinking in that perspective. And this mindset word is a very dangerous word. Once you start talking about mindsets, should it be global? Should it be domestic? Should it be focused? I think so. Let's get rid of this word that we need to have a type of mindset. No, I really disagree with anything. I just say you need to have it at different points of time. You have different calls, and you should have that capability of being able to understand the situation, analyze, use your filters, and come up with what you feel is most opportune at that point of time. And if as a board director, we also bring a lot of networking experience. So it's very important that you are able to connect the management with the right people, organize meetings, be part of it, those discussions, to enable them to look at a much larger canvas. So that's how I would sum up in very briefly.
Right, Sanjay. Thank you. I would totally agree. I think the board's role in pushing the envelope is very critical. So at the board level, taking questioning the status quo is equally important. We can't say just because it's been done this way, just because year on year we've been following a certain way of doing things, and this is the market, this is how we view it, this is how it's going to be. And I think the board brings that outside in perspective, which is very critical in questioning the status quo and looking at possibilities that could be, which may not have been tried and tested earlier. So board members having expertise across industries, like you said, bring that perspective. Savithri ji, would you want to add anything on these points?
Sure. If you look at the role of boards, traditionally, managerial oversight was considered to be the main role of the board. And in fact, if you look at the constitution of the boards and the composition of the boards, say 15 years ago, you would find that people with domain expertise were preferred as board members. Then they would get appointment as board members in those respective companies. Today, it is the cross-domain expertise which actually pulls people onto boards, because as you just mentioned, it's a question of questioning status quo. The methods of working need to be questioned, because today we are in a new age scenario where it's not about the market, which was of course understood in the best possible sense even earlier, but today the world is shrinking in some sense, and along with it, it also has brought about a lot of opportunities as well as complexities. When you look at the business scenario, the strategy therefore becomes a very complex piece which needs to be understood. And therefore, I would say, if I were to put it in simple terms, creating strategy has become a very important role of the board. And this is pretty important, because one of the industries which has always excited me to understand the reasons for failure is one of the pager industry. Technological advancement and technological obsolescence brought about an end to this particular industry in the shortest possible time. And it was just overtaken by mobile phones. Whoever thought that branded salt could be sold in our country, where people still preferred salt being taken from the salt pans, and we still have it. But at the same time, you have branded salt, branded water. I'm sure all of us smiled and we thought that the market would only be at the railway stations. But that's not actually the market today. So how do you create a strategy? How do you communicate? How do you create markets have not been restricted only to the management of the company? It's one which is very, very debated, which is debated in great details in the boardrooms and is understood and questioned by the board members time and again. The other important point, in my opinion, is one of fostering adaptability. Just as Sanjay mentioned, change is something which is happening at a very fast pace. In the olden days, or rather when you look at history, the cycle of change was of a much longer period. But today we are encountering change in a very short time span. For example, when you look at the new age industries, what is it that you have to sell? In fact, for example, when we were looking at IT industry way back in 2000 or early, or rather late 90s and early part of the century, it was the term that was used was eyeball and number of visitors to the site. Or for that matter, when we looked at malls, we said footfalls and the like. These were all new terms which were coined. But what is important is, what did the IT industry actually have? It's manpower and what you hold between your 2 ears. So creating and fostering adaptability across the organization is one which has become a major challenge for the boards. And they need to create a thinking which will lead to this. And of course, domain insights, where cross-domain insights in terms of learning from best practices in other industries is something which is very, very important. Like, for example, if you're looking at customer service, would you be looking at customer delight of the hospitality industry? Even if you're looking at internal customers, are examples which one is quite keenly aware of. And this is the one which one looks at, because the boards would want to build a resilient organization which is sustainable in the long run. Over to you, Bhavana.
Bhavana, I just wanted to add something. When it comes to new age businesses, because that's the specific topic of the panel, I think so as a board member, it's very critical for you to keep asking questions on what is plan B, what is plan C, because changes are so fast. and so unpredictable. It's not like setting up a cement plant, which has a standard simple route where you're only looking at the gestation period, how many months will it come up. Here, things are changing so fast, just like as the example of a pager was giving and the mobile phone came. So this question, because the management is normally very focused and they've gone so deep that they sort of get married to their ideas. It's a director's job, especially the independent directors or those who are outside the system, to question, ask, and show alternatives and ask them what have they thought about it. Do they have a plan B? How are they going to take it, or will one shock wipe them off? So I think so. This is a very important thing from a director's perspective.
Absolutely, Sanjay. And I think we aptly heard the point around boards bring in this outside-in perspective. They bring in a kind of diversity of thought. And I would actually kind of move the discussion into, I've used the term diversity. And to me, the whole argument, or shall we call it the business case for diversity, as they put it. And by the way, I'm still only talking diversity. I'm not even talking gender over here. But the whole piece around diversity, whether at a business level or even at a board level, enables some of this pushing the boundaries, kind of questioning the status quo, thinking beyond the obvious. So to me, I think we are right now, and I'll just talk from even an India perspective. We are at that cusp where we have realized that there is value to diversity, whether in a business or at its senior most level, junior most, middle levels, anywhere. And change has to come from the top, which is where the whole agenda around boards being more diverse becomes even more critical. Because like I was saying a couple of minutes back, the whole piece, and I know you don't like using the term mindset, but here we are talking about a way of thinking. And the more diverse or let's say the visible diversity on a board is, the easier it is for a business to navigate the uncertain pieces. Because what you've done is you've just brought in an additional, let's say, delta or a big difference in the way people are now thinking collectively. So let's acknowledge, every time you, me, anybody comes from a different background or a different education, whatever, we do bring in a perspective that is not as obvious to what has been, accepted so far. And that is where the whole business case on diverse boards come in. So would you think, for instance, Savithri ji, having more diversity on boards, let's talk in terms of women, for instance, right now, would enable companies to become even better? And when I say better, it's very broad. Let's talk resilient, let's talk performance, whichever aspect. And that to me is a big value addition when we are talking about women on boards. So Savithri ji, what would you think of that?
Right. I think diverse boards certainly add higher value to the discussions, the manner of execution, and it also brings in inclusiveness with it. Because at the board, if you have a diverse board, what the message that you're sending across is that here are a set of people who are going to be looking at different aspects when they decide. That's a kind of belief which people around you would anyways have. That's kind of given. Talking of women on boards, something that I have actually seen at work, I would say that women also tend to take care of the humane aspect also, apart from skills being brought onto the table. So it's about the people factor, which is brought in very strongly. That doesn't mean that men don't take care of it, but it is just that the discussions also take into account these aspects apart from the performance-based ones, because I've seen very highly accomplished women on the boards, and I have seen the kind of perspective that they bring in. And I would say that it certainly enhances the quality of discussions, it enhances the quality of performance, and most importantly, it also brings in a feeling of a greater level of engagement. Because what's important is ultimately it is people who make things happen. You may have the best of machines, you may have the best of products, and you may have put in all the money that is required, but it is ultimately people who are going to make your results go that extra bit. The rule of summation, where you get that extra delta, is actually brought in by people. And for people to feel engaged, for people to feel that their goals are getting aligned with the organizational goals, it is important to put them first. And that's something which additionally women ensure that they bring in. I'm not going to restrict it only to women, because you also have, when you talk of diversity, it could be cross-cultural diversity, it could be within our own country, we have different cultures, and even that assimilation of the different cultures brings in something which is far more beautiful, far more resilient, and it helps us in being able to achieve much more in a shorter duration. And I would also say that if you look at companies which have operations in multiple jurisdictions, say, for example, I've had I would actually look back and say it was a fortune of handling litigations in some of the countries in Africa. I've also handled litigation in some of the European countries. And you then look at the experiences in the two places and the differences and the learnings that you had. For example, on intellectual property rights, when I was meeting the lawyers in Nigeria, I was pleasantly surprised to see the level of application of the US laws that they were making over there. And of course, it was a different experience being guarded by two armored vehicles when I was traveling by car, but that was also an experience in itself. I think that in short answers, but I think I can go on diversity. But what's more important is, I would say that it enhances performance. Right. And yeah, over to you.
Great. Sanjay, did you want to add anything?
Just something which comes to my mind. A rainbow always has 7 colors. So to make a rainbow, you need 7 colors. I think so. Nothing can, emphasize diversity and the benefit than that one single example of our life. And coming to my own personal experiences, as Savithri ji has already said, but everyone comes with a different background, a different way of looking things. And it's very important, because no one, as good as you may be, you can at max, cover 70-80% of the possible, perceptions or the possibilities. You definitely need even the most brilliant people need that extra set of people for that 10-15% to reach a reasonable level of completeness. Of course, we are always imperfectly perfect, but even to reach there, that sort of diversity is, I think so, it's, I don't think so we really need to discuss it. If someone does not have a diverse board, they might as well not have a board and just have their CEO and company secretary meeting, have a yes man's committee, top management, I think so. So I think so there's no two ways about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Sanjay. And we actually had a very interesting question. So it almost led me to my thought on, as we are talking about, let's just focus from a gender perspective, diversity on the boards. A lot of, women, and Savithri ji, I'll go to the point you mentioned some time back, on expertise versus a broader understanding. So one of the participants is actually talking about, how in our current roles, so several people who are probably listening to us have jobs with focus on several specific areas. So the question is, when you are focused, you have execution, you have deliverables to do, how would you groom yourself to be, especially if you're an aspiring board member, to actually gear yourself up to bring value to a board, given how times are changing, given that we are looking to bring in perspectives that may not be obvious. So whether it's mentoring, whether it is hand-holding, what are some of the ways in which we as a panel think participants or aspiring directors, especially women directors, can actually get themselves out there? Of course, we all say, first thing you need to do is you need to raise your hand. You need to make your desire, your aspiration known to people who probably can make a difference. What else can aspiring women directors do to be able to be at the helm of affairs in organizations that are willing to listen? So Sanjay, Savithri ji, whichever of you wants to kind of share your thoughts.
I'll just share. I think so. Few years back, it was made compulsory for a certain category to have one lady director on the board. I think so. They have a really onerous responsibility to tell those respective boards the contribution that a lady can make is no less than anyone else. And that, like I can say in my board, if I have to choose a board member, gender is not even a consideration. Why? Because we have that experience that it really doesn't matter, whether it's a male person or a female person coming on the board. It is the person's background, expertise, CV, etc., whatever. So I think so that is very important when a male-dominated board suddenly has a lady coming by law. If she doesn't make that specific contribution, we are very lucky that today our country has so many lady company secretaries. I attended a convocation 4-5 years back, and I was pleasantly surprised to see more young ladies walking up to take their degree rather than men. So I think so that also gives a necessary pool availability, which is also very important, because when you go out and choose, you need to find talent which is easily available. So I think so this is a message to whoever there is representing a board. More will only come if you show the way, if you show that it doesn't make a difference whether you're a female or a male. So I think so that's going to be, and coming to what, how do you create that DNA in you apart from saying I want to do it? I said, whatever job you're doing is, don't restrict yourself to the job. Always present that this person has that plus factor, has that plus learning intent, is ready to volunteer to do something more than, if you're a marketing person, you say, I'm just a marketing person, I'm just a finance guy. You need to show that special thing. Forget being a board member to really move up the ladder where diversity becomes more important than specialization. You really need to show that intent. That's what your seniors are looking. They are looking whether you really want to do it, you have it in you, or you're just happy and contented with doing what you do. So I just wanted to leave that one message. Thank you.
Sure. Bhavana, I would just like to add, I fully endorse whatever has been said. I think today we are in an age where no individual would be able to master several distinct skills. And therefore, what is easily done is collaboration and networking. And by networking, you get to know and learn from the experiences of others. There are others who may have possibly walked 10 miles more, and therefore you would be able to gain from their experiences. And it's not that you just have to follow what they did, but actually you can learn from what they did, see the situation that you are in, and try to better the solution. You don't have to make all the mistakes that others did, and which is something which I often keep talking and telling others, that you have to see as to how you crunch the timeline by learning from other seniors in the profession. Mentoring certainly helps, but when you talk of mentoring, my sincere advice is learn to see those special spots in your own skills and don't change your style. Learn skills adapted to your style to make something new grow. And that will be your unique style of doing it. It's like a tennis player who's strong in backhand should not learn forehand. Of course, he should be able to attack and also ensure that he defends it well. But if he changes his style completely, he's not going to be able to better what he already knows. And that's exactly the reason he needs to, whenever you have a mentor, you need to be clear as to what you're learning and what you need to learn. So you'll be clear on how you want to learn. This is not specific to a board member. It's specific, I would say, to any professional who wants to grow. And as a professional, to make your mark, as was also mentioned by Sanjay, you need to have the ownership mindset and take ownership for what you do. Take accountability, take responsibility. It's not about mistakes are someone else's and credit is yours. It's a question of, standing in front if there is something that's going wrong, and to be able to say that, look, let's mitigate the loss, because sometimes things may not go exactly the way you had planned. So how are you going to be able to respond to the situation? Most people react rather than respond. It's necessary to learn the distinction between response to a situation and reacting to a situation. Hold back, see. And when you do this, you would be in a position where you are in a position to give. And that's exactly the one where you would be able to look at the situation objectively. Of course, it's easier said than done that you need to distinguish between the person and the transaction, but it's not impossible. It is one which a person on the board needs to be able to distinguish. Like, say, for example, if there is a presentation which is going on, while you find that there are certain issues which don't seem to be going right, you are not going to tell the person, hey, stop, this is not okay. You're going to ask those questions to direct the person to realize that what is being said is not okay, because that is what will lead to correction in behavior rather than just letting the person know that there is a mistake. You don't want people to go out of the boardroom feeling terrible. You want them to realize that there is something better that can be done. That's how you raise the bar as well as push the goalpost further. Over to you, Bhavana.
Thank you, Savithri. I guess we got a lot of tips, not just on how to get on board, but also on how to rise up the ladder. And that's very useful. Thank you for that. I was just remembering the time I was invited to join one of the boards. And of course, the starting point of the discussion was they were looking for a women director. And my question to them was, is that the only reason? And if that is the only reason, then I will need to go back and think. And not until they had clarified that there were other reasons, maybe I just pushed them to think those. Could I actually bring myself to say, okay, I am happy to be part of this particular board? The point being, if there is value that the board is adding to you, then you need to be clear that you need to bring value beyond just the gender that has become a compulsion for companies, which have gone beyond their mandate of just including family members and, literally almost in some cases dummy board members, but actually bringing in value there. And, one of the questions from the audience is on, recognition. Are there, any recognitions for people who are working towards women empowerment? I think our biggest recognition would be when we kind of, move the needle and actually see that there is goodness driving more goodness. So the minute we make it a virtuous circle is where it would have been recognized. I am not aware of where the recognition is happening, but I think the recognition is actually in moving the needle. Like I say, treading the path less taken is always satisfying because you just show others that there are possibilities, even if they have not yet experienced them. And to me, I think Divya has shown up here on the screen just at the right time, because I was going to add that Mentor My Board and the intent with which this has started is exactly for the purpose of enabling future aspiring board members, especially women, to kind of take the next step. So Divya, I'm going to pass it on to you and let us know if there are more questions or any reflections from the audience.
I think such a wonderful interaction, and even I forgot the time that we have overshooted for 5 or almost 10 minutes. But yes, there are a lot of questions coming up, and I'm sure those questions are getting recorded by the system. So we will get in touch with you, because very specific questions related to mentoring, because I know Sanjay ji has been big time into mentoring. We both have been working. I mean, under his leadership, I am working as a national chairperson for the national convener for the mentoring initiative of JITO JBN. So a lot of questions are coming up on that. We will get in touch with you separately for that. But yes, I mean, when I see overall this entire the space of directors, independent directors, women directors, and I when I started this concept, so that was the first thing which I realized, that there is a lot of things which are happening as an entrepreneur. A lot of things are happening, probably for the best top companies. They are best of the best firms, companies, institutions who are training, various institutions are there. But when we talk of the larger SME, MSME sector, where boards even don't exist, there's a huge gap and huge need. And I think that's where Mentor My Board is working on upskilling, grooming directors. Now that director can be independent director, women directors, promoter directors is a major focus, because changing the mindset, howsoever you train independent directors, unless the promoter directors are of a mindset to accept those, suggestions, inputs from independent directors, they would not be able to contribute. So I think that change in mindset, towards the better governance is what I have been working, and entire team of Mentor My Board. Initially, I used to say I have been working, but now I see we have a bigger team of almost 15 people who are working with us rigorously to make this mission possible. So thank you so much for all of you for being here with us, and great insights. And I think
Divyaji, can I just take one liner for all our mentees who are here?
Absolutely.
I always tell my mentees, suno or samjho sabki, but karo apni. So that's a cardinal principle of whoever takes mentors, who's a mentor or a mentee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
So,
you.
yes, thank you so much, Savithri ma'am, Bhavana, for this self-moderated session, and deep gratitude from the entire team for all of you taking out time and being here. Over to you, Manisha.